Victor Wembanyama coming up with the rebound, but right there. Oh, that's brutal. Elbows Nas Reed in the neck. Take a look at this one. Slow-mo might be even worse than fast motion. Refs will review this, and he would be ejected from the game. The flagrant 2, his first ejection of his career. I'm just saying that's something worth monitoring going ahead to Game 5. So you're without your superstar. Well, how do the Spurs respond? Well, they responded fairly well until the end of the fourth. Ayo Dosunmu taking this one to the rack and one with 1:17 to go, and that's going to put this game on ice for the Spurs. The Wolves go on to win 114-109, tying this series up at 2 apiece. Anthony Edwards doing Anthony Edwards things, finishing with 36, 6, and 2. Dylan Harper leading the way for the Spurs with 24, but it's not quite enough for the Spurs. They lose their big man, and they lose their lead in the series. We're joined by CBS Sports NBA analyst John Henson. As the Wolves, they escape with the victory to tie the series up at 2 apiece, and Victor Wembanyama, probably the story of this game, being ejected in the second quarter. I want to get your take on how much did this ejection just change the temperature of this game? Because for San Antonio, you lose your superstar in Victor Wembanyama, but Minnesota also, they have to deal with the pressure of knowing they have to win if you have no Victor Wembanyama on the floor.
Yeah, we've seen the Spurs against the Trailblazers when they lost Wemby. They came back. They had a really good win. I mean, Fox, Vassell, Castle, Harper Jr., those guys can win games for you, and they almost did tonight. They ran out of gas because of Ant Edwards, man, battling through it, going to get oxygen in the tunnel. We can never count these guys out. We've said it time and time again. It's 2-2. Wemby, unfortunately, lesson learned, young playoff team. Hey, look, can't swing your elbow and get ejected and hurt your team. But the story is Anthony Edwards. And listen, he's only getting healthier day by day. The Spurs better figure out how to put this thing out of reach or win a couple more games quickly before he gets back to 100%. And then we're going to have a series on our hands.
I want to talk a little bit more about Anthony Edwards, but first, let's go back to this Victor Wembanyama ejection, because we saw there in the replay, Dylan Harper kind of shocked once he heard the news that Victor Wembanyama being ejected after that play. It sounds like I might know your answer, but did you agree with the way the refs handled this ejection?
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but, because you don't want to see a play like that go out of playoffs. But, I mean, he loaded up. He followed through above the neck. That, by nature of the rule, he needs to be ejected. And it's just unfortunate for the Spurs. They tried to pull a rabbit out of the hat, but they couldn't. Valiant effort. But, hey, look, series is 0-0 right now going home. Spurs got to win 2 out of 3 on their home court. They get to go into the next round.
If you are the Spurs, how do you handle, what's your response when you're essentially, your superstar is getting ejected? And this is, let's be honest, like, you're in a crucial spot right here. You have the opportunity to go up 3-1 in this series.
Yeah, I mean, it hurts a little bit, but this is how things go. All champions have went through it. All young teams have went through it. OKC, game 7s, game 6s, where it's win now or go home. They're going to have to grow up fast. And if they don't, Minnesota will be advanced to the 3rd straight Western Conference Finals. But as a Spurs, hey, look, we go back home, we regroup, flush this down the toilet. Wemby's going to come out extra motivated, minus the elbows, and I think the Spurs will be fine.
Extra motivated minus the elbows. But will they come out extra motivated? Let's say there is no Victor Wembanyama. Do you believe there could be any league discipline for him after that ejection? And if so, how does that change things?
I always tell my friends, I say, listen, this is entertainment, right? The NBA understands, they have their rules. Hey, look, flagrant 2, let's move forward. This is a physical kind of playoff battle. It happens. Lesson learned for Wemby. Glad he didn't do this maybe in the later rounds if they were down 2-1 potentially or something like that. So this was a good time for him to learn a lesson. Didn't hurt him too much. However, going home up 3-1 would have felt a lot better. Now it's a must-win. Game 5 at home. Can't ask for much more at home for a must-win, but definitely the Spurs missed out on an opportunity tonight.
Absolutely. But let's go back, because at the top you were talking about Anthony Edwards. You said the Spurs ran out of gas because of Anthony Edwards. What did you make, though, just about how San Antonio, their defensive strategy to try to contain him? Seems like he was being double-teamed quite a bit there.
Yeah, there's a reason he's one of the best players in the world. Arguably was one of the best players on the Olympic team with all the best guys. He just willed his team to victory offensively. 2 big threes to change the tide of the game. Listen, if he does not attack and take the game by the horns, they're going to lose. So Ant could barely even breathe. They had to stay on the other end of the court at one point. So look, just the warrior type mentality for him. We've seen it year in and year out. We've discounted this with Minnesota team so many times, and somehow, some way, they're tied 2-2 with an unhealthy superstar. They're in a good spot right now.
Oh, 100% you're in a good spot. If you're Minnesota and you're coming into this series being told, hey, you already know that Anthony Edwards is dealing with an injury, but hey, you're sitting at 2-2 after 4 games. But I do want to dive just a little bit deeper into this matchup, because you think about this. You have a Wemby-less Wolves team, or a Wemby-less Spurs team, facing a Wolves team that gets this win by, what, 5 points? Is that concerning to you at all? Do you leave this game feeling more encouraged by Minnesota's response, or just impressed with the Spurs fight without their franchise player?
Impressed with the Spurs fight. You're talking about an All-NBA Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, literal game changer on both ends of the court, and they had a valiant effort. I mean, if I'm the Spurs, I'm like, okay, well, we didn't have Wemby, but we played a little faster, a little more guard-centric as well. Maybe they can try to use this game to sprinkle in some of that into their game plan in Game 5, because we saw with the Portland game when they didn't have Wemby, when they sped it up and let those guards go, they're still really good. So maybe potentially they can infuse kind of their performance tonight into the next game and win at home.
Nonetheless, I mean, whether you have Wemby or not, hopefully we do, because that is must-see TV. You want to see that superstar there on the court in a very important Game 5 and at home. But nonetheless, I think it maybe raised some eyebrows. The Spurs were able to handle their own for a good chunk of that game, wasn't able to close it out, which goes to show why you need your big man. We'll see how Game 5 takes shape. That's Tuesday. We appreciate you stopping by, Henson.
Thank you.
Well, Henson talked about it. This story is about Anthony Edwards and the kind of outing that he had, especially there in the fourth quarter, finishing with 36 points, but 16 of them coming in the fourth quarter alone. Look at the rest of the Wolves team. They had 18. He was 6 of 8 shooting. They were 6 of 15. Shot 75%. Perfect from three-point land. His output essentially superseding what the rest of the team has done in the fourth quarter. And just to think, he's doing it.
T-Wolves. We will start with the ping pong balls, though. They'll bounce at 3 Eastern. What team will land the #1 overall pick in this summer's draft? Wizards, Pacers, Nets all have the best odds to get that top pick at 14%. John Henson played 8 seasons in the NBA, and John, more than 6 of those in Milwaukee. And of course, there will be a lot of attention on the Bucks this offseason with the uncertainty around Giannis Antetokounmpo's future. How, or do you think, the lottery will influence the Giannis market today?
Well, I've got my eye on 2 teams, the Warriors and the Heat. Warriors have a 9% chance of landing in the top 4. They were willing to offer their first-round pick this year. Maybe the Bucks knew, hey, look, this is one of the best draft classes, at least on paper, for freshmen in decades. We can kind of pick our spot, so that's probably why they didn't trade Giannis early, knowing the Warriors potentially could get a top 4 pick, and then the Warriors are going to have some real decisions to make, rather than, kind of potentially throwing them a first-round pick early, and then they don't know where the Warriors are going to land. And then you have the Heat, who have been well documented, trying to find a star via trade. They've got a 4% chance of landing in the top 4. I think this puts them in trade for Giannis as well, because they're in a win-now situation. They've got Bam. They've got the pieces. I think with the top 4 pick, they could secure Giannis. And like I said, I think the Bucks knew, hey, look, we have the power. We can wait to see where everyone lands in the lottery, and then we can start making some phone calls. Maybe we can throw Sack in the mix as well. But look, Hawks got the #1 pick with a 3% chance. Anything can happen, as we've seen. We talked kind of about this off camera. We love when the teams that aren't supposed to get a top pick because, look, it leads to other teams now trying to say, look, we just got to go win. Makes the quality of the game better. Makes the game more fun to watch, unlike kind of with the Utah Jazz, who's been fined over $600,000 for anti-tanking rules.
And yeah, John, I would think the NBA wants a team maybe beyond that 14% group to get the top pick here. It would kind of just get the ball rolling even more with those anti-tanking rules. All right, let's get to the games on the floor here. Again, we'll find out the NBA draft lottery at 3 o'clock Eastern. The Knicks and Sixers will tip off shortly after that. If the Sixers get swept, will that be an official end to the process era in Philly? Some would argue it has already ended. Joel's really the only guy left.
Yeah, I mean, they were down 3-1 to the Celtics series, and we were already talking about how, look, there's going to be some tough conversations. They come back, kind of put a Band-Aid over the wound, but they're right back to where they were last series, right? Down to a team that they're supposed to be able to compete with on paper, right? What do you do with Embiid, who hasn't played more than 6 games in a row all year? Doesn't have the pop of old, but still, when he plays, is fairly effective at 32. And an aging Paul George, who has actually looked good down the stretch. But you're also paying max money to a guy that hasn't scored over 20 points in 9 out of his last 10. You've got 2 cornerstone all-NBA kind of young guards and Maxey and Edgecombe who you can build around. So there's optimism, but it'll be a fascinating summer for Del Morey. As we know, he's more than not the aggressor when it comes to roster building. But you don't want to deplete too much because you do have 2 kind of guys. Well, you're going to have to eventually pay them for one. So you need to try to maximize the time to try to win right now. So it's going to be super interesting, but I think you've got to figure out how to get rid of those 2 bad contracts without doing too much to your roster. Daryl Morey's got his work cut out for him this summer.
He sure does, because Embiid just recently even has been outspoken about the team maybe not doing enough to add some pieces down the stretch. In offseason, that will be really interesting. All right, let's pick this one here, New York and Philly.
I'm going to go with the Knicks. I think that the Knicks are going to take it. Philly hasn't looked great as of late. They've kind of just been limping into these matches and these battles. Look, the Celtics series was a bad matchup. Celtics decided to save some money in the interior, came back to bite them. Joel Embiid killed them, and that's how. But the Knicks have the interior. They have the guard play. They have a championship-level team, and you see what's going on down 3-0. I think this is the close the casket day for the 76ers in the process era. It's been a good ride. I mean, Joel Embiid's 32. Can you think about that? He's 32 years old. It seems like just yesterday he was just coming into the NBA. Hey, look. Only person not running Father Time was LeBron. Everybody else is still on track.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. All right, let's go out west. The Spurs and T-Wolves here. Rudy Gobert has been a real defensive factor in this postseason. Can he give Wemby some trouble today in Game 4?
I don't know about trouble. Maybe contained. Maybe make it tough. I actually, speaking of Joel Embiid, he was the toughest guy for me to guard because he had so much offensive freedom. Similar to Wemby, he can shoot it, he can take it up the court, he can post it up, he can initiate offense. Literally it's so hard to guard a big that can do that. So credit to Rudy Gobert, but all he can do is hopefully contain him, and hopefully Wemby settles for threes. I think that's probably the only thing he can get him to do. Maybe bait him in some threes. He shot 25% from 3 on 7 attempts in Game 1, and the Timberwolves won. But averaging 23, 15, and 6. Good luck, Rudy. There's not much you can do for one of the best players, and you could argue his defensive impact has been more so than his offensive impact in this series.
Yeah, right. 5 blocks the last time out, and you can see those scoring numbers we just showed you are only going up as this series has gone along. Young star in Ant in Minnesota, young star in San Antonio in Wemby. Are we looking at what is developing into the next great playoff rivalry in this league?
I wouldn't call it a rivalry yet, but that's out of respect to the T-Wolves, back-to-back Western Conference Finals. Yep. So these guys have been there, done that. Maybe the OKC Spurs angle is a lot more realistic, timing-wise, roster-wise. They beat them 4 times this year. But the Timberwolves are just becoming that thorn in the side that won't go quietly into the night. I kind of liken them to the Jimmy Butler-led Heat when he was there, right? Somehow, some way, they go to the finals as an 8 seed, right? They're in the mix at all times. This is kind of how Ant Edwards has these T-Wolves playing in the West. But rivalry-wise, not yet. I'm going to give respect to the T-Wolves. Back-to-back Western Conference Finals appearances. The Spurs have a lot of work to do for me to put them in rivalry territory with anyone in the NBA right now.
All right, so does Minnesota show that resilience you just talked about today, or does San Antonio grab hold of this series?
Listen, I'm done doubting the Wolves. These guys, every time we doubt them, they come back with ferociousness. I think it's 2-2 going back to San Antonio. If you see, Ant is only getting healthier. If the San Antonio does not put this team out quickly and Ant gets back to 100%, similar to that Celtics series, we could see something like that where now Game 7, Ant's healthy, he's feeling good, and it could go either way for this Spurs team that, they look like they're ready to take that next step, but there's a guy that has done this before and ruined everyone's hopes and dreams for a playoff season.
Well, the longer this goes, may not be good news for either team because it certainly looks like a short series between OKC and the Lakers ahead of the Western Conference Finals. John Henson, our NBA analyst here on HQ. John, thank you. Another look at the games tonight here in the NBA playoffs. The Knicks and Sixers, 3:30 Eastern, with New York going for a sweep, and the Spurs and Timberwolves. That is game 4 there as well. San Antonio leading 2-1.